Welcome back to It's Disc Golf, day 2 of the Kansas City Flying Disc Challenge. 2 courses today at this beautiful property, Paradise Point. Honestly, it's kind of a disc golf paradise. There's 3 courses on this property, but slight bag update. I don't have a neutral stable destroyer. I have my neutral understable, my Echo Star. I have my pretty overstable but glidey SDS and my Calvin Boy. So I just was not trusting any of them yesterday, and I got to get some more work in them to figure them out, and it cost me some strokes. So I took it out the bag. Excited for today. Still in the cash. Just got to make sure I continue playing well, play my game, continue making putts, not miss the last part of the day, trying to get that out of my head so I don't bring that momentum into today's round. Starting on hole number 4. Pretty exciting. Should be pretty good. Just want to make sure that I cash today. If I can move into the top 10, that'd be super solid. I'm tied 16th right now. I think 3 strokes out of top 10, so let's see if we can make it happen.
Hole number 4 is our starting hole. It's 270-foot par 3. This course is the Blackthorn course at Paradise Point, which is 6,317 feet, par 58. I'm throwing my Gold Line Pure on maybe a little bit too much hyzer, not maybe, definitely, because I thought it would flip up and ride to the right. It's probably a mid-range because of the low ceiling that you have to negotiate through that little gap. I don't quite get through, but I step up and think I'm really easily just going to pitch this underneath the basket with the step putt. End up putting it a little bit too lazily outside to the left, which leaves me with a 25-foot look for the par to save that. Also, again, big shout out to Sebastian and Jessica, who are my caddy and filmographer, very fancy title, trying to really line up this first putt and make it. Trying to go through my simple routine, but I ended up caging the first putt of the day from inside the circle. Unfortunately, that's the perfect segue to look at the bottom left hand of your screen. You'll see a -6 and +1 putting. I'm carrying over the scores through all the rounds. I started -7 going into this round, and +1 putting means that I've made one more circle 2 putt than I missed circle 1 putt in the tournament so far. Throwing my zone here, and my flat has tended to be a little bit more turned over on Anheuser with that zone, I guess. I thought I threw the perfect shot through the gap, but maybe my body was aimed a little bit more to the left. Not 100% sure. Luckily, we are able to straddle out of this bush, which is tick and poison ivy infested. Found so many ticks on myself this weekend. Was able to pitch up with the Anheuser, and as you saw with my swing there, it was much more wrist than it was arm. When I'm throwing these touch shots, I really have to remember to do that, because if you watch yesterday's round, you saw that I definitely did not do that on a couple shots that would have saved me some strokes. End up making that putt, which is solid. Nice little bounce back from just outside the bullseye probably to make a circle 1 putt after missing one. And we're moving on to hole number 3 for us, which is a 219-foot par 3 basket through all these gaps. So I'm going to be throwing my origin just really slightly. End up puring the first gap, but I threw in a little bit too much hyzer. I should have thrown it flat. Maybe I should have thrown a flippy putter, but I have a pure in my bag that is a little bit warped, which I thought that I would like, but I just don't like warped discs, so I think I have to put a new flippy baseline pure back in my bag. We have a circle 2 look to try to make and take back that circle 1 stroke. Really not a bad shot from downhill, especially from a straddle. My step putting from a straddle has been really poor recently, but it leaves us with about a 20-foot look, which we're able to cash a little bit right side, so want to push that back towards the center for the rest of these putts. I meant make that mental note and move us into hole number 7, which is a 206-foot par 3. Now, I think that these holes on this course are super interesting because they're just like holes that you don't normally play in a lot of tournaments. I've been playing a lot of longer holes, a lot of bigger ones, not these kind of you have to hit your gap and score, otherwise you're probably going to be falling behind the field. I throw my Crystal Flex zone on a high hyzer line, which gets right up to the basket and leaves me with just this 15-foot tap in to try to start myself on the birdie train, which luckily we're able to capitalize on. One of the interesting things about a lot of these holes is that some of them, not all of them, have a little bit of lucky aspect to them. That one was a pretty pure line. The hole before it had a pure line but was a little tight. Now this hole I think is a little bit fluky. There's a left gap that I'm going to try to flex my Crystal Flex zone through, just throw it on a touch of Anheuser out of the hand. And again, I just pull it to the left. So looks like that's not a shot that we're going to be able to throw today. I kind of am acknowledging to myself that little touchy, slight Anheuser out of the hand shot, I just continue to miss to the left. Take a mental note of that so that I don't throw that for the rest of the round, even though it's a shot I was super confident in last week for my tournaments. And it leaves me with a relatively tricky upshot here. Even though this hole is only 210 feet, I probably only got about 80 feet off the tee. So I'm again going to throw my Crystal Flex zone. And what you're going to see there is I kind of stepped through that shot. And that's something that I've noticed that I really like to do, throwing up shots straight through gaps when the gaps might be a little bit tighter. I don't know what it is about that, but not bracing correctly and really just following through that shot and going with the disc forward, obviously not foot faulting, not stepping over my lie before it's out of my hand. I've really been enjoying for hitting these smaller, tighter gaps on those touchier shots, so I don't have to juice it super hard through it, but I still get the momentum to get it there. Hole number 9 is a 311-foot par 3. I feel like I ranged it to like 330 feet or something. It's slightly down there, so I'm going to be throwing my strike, the swirly one, first run, which I have beaten to be a little bit flip up. I throw the hyzer out of the hand, which flips up and rides that right side, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. But I end up throwing it a little bit long and leave myself with an inside the circle look, but from the back edge of those grasses. Really need to make sure that I'm focusing up on this putt, aiming for a chain link, because on that first hole, I definitely was not aiming. And that's something that I noticed that I didn't do at the beginning of a lot of tournaments, was aim. Definitely taking my time with this routine, which can mean that it's out of my routine, but we're able to commit and capitalize to the putt. What you saw in that practice putt was really me trying to force myself to remember to commit and actually open up my hand and extend my elbow and my arm fully. Hole number 10 is a 302-foot par 3 over this lake. I had a bunch of different ways to get there in practice, but right now the wind is a slight right to left, meaning I want to go against that, so I want to throw the forehand instead of the backhand that I was really throwing well with the Envy or the Pathfinder. I parked it, just based it with this Firebird. But because I had been missing so much flat to Annie, I really wanted to put a little bit extra hyzer and a little bit extra juice into that shot to make sure I got over the water. I ended up throwing it with a really good nose angle and a really good line, just not exactly what I wanted, and it leaves me with an outside the circle, probably 40 or 50 foot look. Now, Zach, who you just saw take the putter out of the basket, he just like drained a putt from a standstill, so I feel like I have to live up to the occasion. And I make another circle 2 putt for the tournament, bringing me back to +2 putting, which is what I think I went into this round at for the week. Really stoked to continue that birdie train. Hopefully we can do it for a couple more holes, and that moves us into hole number 11, which is a really interesting shot. The basket is kind of in the middle right of your screen, and there is a massive tree that is kind of overhanging it and guarding it, but there's also a big overhang in front of us, so I need to throw like this really big spike hyzer, and I go with my destroyer. I was almost getting there with my Firebirds and Honors. I never really parked it very well, and that's probably a good tree that knocked me down, because I could have maybe snuck through and gave myself a close look to the basket, but it would not have had a lot of a line unless I had like a really lucky opening that I was able to get through. So to be out in the open with another circle 2 look, my steppers really felt dialed. I don't know what it is about this new inline step putt. I feel like I'm able to keep the disc on one line instead of hyzering it. Nice. And we're able to knock down another one. So really stoked to continue on that birdie train, make another circle 2 putt, move us into +3 putting, and moves us into another par 4. 541 foot, not super far. I feel like this tee sign said 650, and it ranged to 650. I feel like some of these numbers are wrong for a lot of this tournament. I'm throwing my Calvin Destroyer, the 2021, because I know it's super overstable, and I can put it on a lot of anhyzer. End up actually getting a really good rip, and I'm only about 260 feet away from the basket. So I'm trying to determine what I want to throw. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Firebird, because I need to throw a spiking hyzer, because there is a slight left to right wind here. I could have also thrown an Ultra, I think, but because I wanted to get a little bit more in the air and a little bit more spike, I throw the Firebird. Out of the hand, I feel like it is really good. Maybe could have a little bit more angle so it'll hit and sit, and I get a pretty decent skip, almost ringing it up for the eagle. It had to have been super close based on where it ended up landing, but it leaves me just outside the circle, and I know that because I had to range it, because I knew that my step putt was kind of on. It seemed like just on the edge, so we ranged it to 36 feet, trying to line up one more. There's one branch to miss, which makes this a little bit of a low ceiling. It's mostly just leaves, though, so maybe we can putt through it. Catch a little bit of that branch, and we go to down 11 for the tournament and +4 putting. Really stoked to continue on the birdie train 4 in a row, and the last turkey with circle 2 putting. Now, this is an interesting teaching moment, because what I just noticed there in my run-up in that moment was I ran up a little bit too straight on. And so there you saw my plant foot move a little bit left on the tee pad, because there's a right to left wind, and I'm throwing downhill with my Firebird, which I've been throwing pretty decently. So I really wanted to throw it to the left. And if I would have aimed a little bit too central, I'd have to like do some weird things with my wrist or kind of like push through it weird. So aiming my body a little bit more left let me put it to about 20 feet just behind the basket. Really stoked. I thought I had parked it, and so maybe I was a little bit nervous for this putt, and I knew that I had 4 in a row and I was putting very well. So I step up to this lie, maybe go through a little bit too much in my routine, but it shouldn't be too big of an issue because it's a pretty close putt. Unfortunately, if you notice there, I was just super undercommitted. I didn't really open up my hand. I didn't fully extend my elbow and my arm. Really frustrated, because that's not a putt that I should be missing almost at all. It is slightly uphill, but that really shouldn't come into too much of a factor. So definitely need to continue practicing and getting up on this tournament nerves. Haven't had a 100% circle 1 putting round yet, but that moves us into another par 4, which is super interesting because it's 657 feet, and this tall grass honestly should be OB at this whole tournament. Unfortunately, because we had 2 rounds that we had to play in the same day, and a bunch of divisions were playing everything at 2 different courses, it probably didn't make a lot of sense for pace of play to make this all OB, because if like I just did that, it would have been super OB and have to basically re-tee. But as you've heard in some other videos, I've not really been hyzering or hyzer flipping anything this tournament. After the first couple rounds where I realized it was costing me strokes, I've been mostly putting everything on ante and letting it flex out. But here, I wanted to see how far I could get that destroyer because my Echo Stars go so far. And so I just kind of ripped it and almost put it into hole one's fairway, but everything is safe. I have 250 feet in. So I'm throwing a Firebird because I have to kind of keep my arm high because of the tall grass. Thought I had shorted it a little bit, and I definitely did, but it leaves me with a just inside the circle look for another birdie, which probably should be like, they should at least make that play as hazard, I feel, just because of how easy a lot of these holes became when you could just throw it basically into the tall grass. Really solid putt, putting it right back in the heart of the chains from a lot further than the putt on the last hole. And I feel like there needs to be a stat for like bounce back circle one putting when you miss one, because a lot of times that can really ruin a round for me specifically, and I know probably for a lot of other people. Hole number 15 is a 550-foot par 4, my favorite hole on the course. I'm throwing my swirly strike. I thought I threw it really well, but I threw it a little bit less hyzer than I probably should have to really push up that fairway to the left. It's going to leave me in a really, really awkward lie, and I know it there because I feel like I really want to get this birdie. It's a super beautiful hole. It's basically just a tunnel from this point about 400 feet, and unfortunately, I'm looking at my lie, and I am right in the middle of thorns. So I'm conferring with Dylan, who you see on the screen here. Big shout out to him. He played super well. I was wondering if there was any relief from thorns because they didn't say anything in the caddy book. No one said anything during our players meeting. And unfortunately, I'm like right in the middle of it. And in order to step out, I can go over everything because I can step over everything and not really affect it. But now there are thorns on all my legs and basically up to my balls, unfortunately. So I have a bunch of different shots that I can throw, but I'm realizing here that I have to be 100% armed because if I do anything with my legs, they're going to get even more ripped up than they already are. I can feel them being punctured. I definitely think that I should have worn pants at this point, but you don't really think that you're going to get into this lie. So I'm deciding to go with my origin because it's slightly flippy. I throw just basically a punch throw. You probably heard that talked about on Broderick's channel if you've been over there at all. And at this point, I'm just trying to get out of this lie, which is not going to go super well. Kind of grateful that Jessica cut this off because this went for probably another minute or so, because after I got out of here I realized I had probably 6 or 7 pretty decent punctures on my legs, but it was worth it because I was able to throw a pretty decent shot instead of just chipping out, and leaves me with this chip shot with the zone. Really have not been getting along with that disc today. I don't know what it is about it, but that forehand and I have not been getting along with the zone. I thought I had shorted it way too much. Kind of wanted to give it a little bit of a bid, but it ended up being a pretty simple par, which I'm really happy with after that first lie. Hole number 16 is a 610-foot par 4. This path places OB and it curves around that tree that's up there. I'm throwing my SDS Destroyer because I know I can put it on a little bit of turn and get a pretty decent amount of distance, but I threw it way too low and was super scared about it until we saw that skip, and I was pretty sure that I had gotten over the path. Luckily, we're able to walk up to it, and I was past the path with a relatively simple upshot from 310 feet downhill. I did range it, and there is a pretty strong left to right headwind coming off of the water there. Basket is right in the middle, and I decided to go with my Envy. I could push a Pathfinder there, but I'm not really trusting flip points at this point, and I don't want to really hyzer it out early, and the putter's really not going to move too much right to left or left to right. So I throw the Envy on maybe a little bit too much hyzer, maybe a little bit too low, and it leaves me just outside the circle short, but I would much rather be short than long going in the water or turned over. I'm kind of doing the Gannon where I go up with my chalk bag and try to see kind of where the wind is blowing, and it's basically a head right to left, so I know that I need to fully commit to this putt on the low right side and really not short it at all. Unfortunately, I just hyzer it and short it, and it leaves me like a 25-foot comeback putt for a par in a really weird kind of left to right crosswind. You never really want to be, what is that saying that everyone talks about? It's like, oh, you're still out? YSO? Yeah, that sucks. This happened a couple times this event, but circle one putting is felt dialed. Hopefully we can drain another. Leave it a little bit high, but really happy to snag that mini and just take a par out of there. Really not bad at all. Moves us to hole number 17, which is a 298-foot par 3. There is a slight tailwind, so I'm throwing my pure on just a hyzer flip line because I knew that the tailwind would stable it out. Unfortunately, it just kind of kept turning up there, and I was super scared that it was going to go OB in the path that's over there. Luckily, I saw it hit the ground a little bit low, and that's why you throw putters, because a lot of the tailwind got blocked by that tree that was just to the right of that tee pad. Just inside the circle here for a comeback look into a headwind. And I really just shorted that again. You saw that my hand never fully came up to my shoulder height. And I was trying to keep my shoulders low so that I wouldn't juice it over the basket. But when you do that, you need to make sure that your hand gets all the way up to your shoulder height, but not above it. So really frustrated to have another circle 1 miss. That brings us back to +2 putting. So we've now officially given back all of those circle 2 putts that we made and moves us into hole 18, which is a 412-foot par 3, which you have to throw a hyzer on. There's hazard, the path and beyond to the right, and there's OB left in those woods. I'm taking my EchoStar Destroyer because it is still a slight tailwind, and I throw it on just a hyzer flip-up line because I'd rather miss right into the hazard than go OB into the woods. Got the wind drop, which super scared me to not get back over that path, but it wound up being the perfect shot, perfect distance. Really stoked to be able to throw now basically 410-foot hyzers, and it leaves me with this pin high look from about 20 feet. Put that away. That is a great birdie, especially with all the OB that is there, and it moves on to the final 3 holes. And at this point, I'm thinking I want to get at least one of these, but at least keep everything bogey free, because I am 6 down. I know at this point, I don't think that's a 1,000 rated round, but I think it's a good round. I throw my SCS Destroyer on just a slight amount of hyzer into a right to left wind. Now, I thought the right to left wind, it would turn a little bit, get back on edge, and go back towards the basket. Unfortunately, this is something that I don't know why I just realized now. When you throw a disc way more right, it turns into a headwind and you're throwing into right left wind if you throw it directly into the wind. So maybe I should have thought of that. I pitch up the zone with another kind of step through punch throw, and it's a pretty relatively simple 15-ish foot tap in. Solid par. That's kind of executing the game plan. I wasn't playing that one for birdie anyways. Hole number 2 is an awesome hole. It's like 240 to 270 feet, depending on whether you're looking at the caddy book or the tee sign there. I'm going to throw my Pathfinder because I was really liking how I got the distance on a low line. I just need to keep my shoulders low, not lift out of the shot early and throw it down that middle gap. And I ended up maybe lifting a slight bit early, and it comes out a little bit early from my hand, leaves me with about 180 to 200 feet in, but there is a kind of straight finish that you need to push. I got the zone in my hand, which I've been throwing pretty well in my upshots, but because it has a little more finish than my MB, I decided to throw my MB for the upshot, just keeping it low because I knew that if I kept it low, it probably wouldn't really juice the basket too much. Throw a really nice line, pushes through those last trees, but it did end up juicing the basket a little bit. And this is one of the things that I realized after this round, and maybe a little bit after the next round, is that my upshots here are going significantly farther than my upshots were in Denver. Really frustrated to not be able to get up that putt. Definitely didn't cut out the fact that I kicked the grass over there because it was a little bit ugly and I didn't want to show that. But another bogey leaves me not clean going into the final hole. I'm only 5 down for the round. I'm only +1 putting now. I have missed more circle 1 than I made circle 2. And this is just a big spike hyzer. Relatively simple 230-foot shot. Up and over everything. Can't really see it come down because it's right behind a tree. And I'm really trying to focus up because I know that I have one more putt that I need to make. Luckily, it's only from about 12 feet. And we get back to 6 down. So we basically went par, par, par if we want to look at it like that. This is the round. It's 982 rated. Moves me up 1 position to tied 15th. Next round coming tomorrow. Watch the last round on the screen now. And that's it. Okay, love you. Bye.